Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. Today we're going to be doing a Blitz meta deep dive, looking at the format right before the upcoming Skirmish season in the next few weekends. So I'm going to take a look at the decks that have been most successful recently, take a look at some example deck lists, and then talk about what you should expect in your local meta. If your Skirmish is going to be sealed, take a look at my pretty recent video about how to do well in sealed. It holds up pretty well still, even after what we've learned from the pre-release season. Play to try to beat fatigue and you should be good. But let's look at the Blitz meta breakdown. Before we hop into it though, I want to thank all my patrons who support me, make sure I can make these videos and get access to plenty of deck lists that are regularly updated with sideboard guides and also a really great tier list for draft. But let's hop right into the video here. Looking at the results on February for the most recent Blitz events, we can see Kano at Auckland took first place and second place. Obviously a pretty good contender. Third place was taken by Oldham. And then we can see we've also, actually it says also third place by Icelander. So one of these was third and one was fourth. And then we've got Prism in fifth as well as Chain. And then I think some more Icelanders. But we can see the meta is Wizard is pretty strong. Kano taking down first and second. And then Icelander also in the top 8 of that event, doing pretty well. Oldham has always been kind of a force in Blitz. And we can see did well in Auckland. And then Prism and Chain also, the Living Legend heroes in Classic Constructed still showing why they should be Living Legend by being super strong in Blitz. We can scroll down and look at the Battle Hardened Indianapolis, where we see that Kano won that as well. Not a huge surprise there. We can see Icelander was in the top 4. We can see Icelander, in the top 8. The kind of, we also saw Chain getting second here, but the kind of call outs here is that we also saw a Dash and a Kasai in the top 8 of this event. And then looking at Hong Kong, we saw a Reinr take second and a Dash win that event. So we can kind of see a setup of heroes here. We've got a lot of deck lists I pulled up at the top here. But looking at these events, we can kind of tell Kano is the strongest hero in Blitz, right? It's won a lot of the most recent events. The power of Stormstriders, as well as the power just to explode your enemy with, easily dealing 20 damage from turn 0. He's just the strongest hero. If everyone was at 20 life, he'd be the best hero in Classic Constructed too. It's just very easy for Kano to put together 20 damage. Him being at 15 life, he actually has less of a life deficit in this format as well. It's only 5 less life than the average hero compared to 10 less life. So he's in a great spot in this format, and he can be a little difficult, but if you can get 20 games in and just learn how to play all the lines, I think you'd be in a good spot for your Skirmish season. This is a great example deck list. Once again, you can find these all on February. You go to decks and then tournament, and you can even sort by Blitz here. So you'll be able to find all the lists here on February. Great place to look at deck lists and a great place to see kind of what the meta currently looks like, especially with Blitz, which hasn't seen a ton of events recently. But I think this is a great deck. It's got some, kind of new tools from Dynasty as well. We've got these Aether Quickenings, the Swell Tidings. But overall, it's just kind of the classic Kano that can just blow people up. It has a ton of arcane, kind of unblockable damage. These lists are going to be a little expensive because a lot of them might have Eye of Ophidia. You probably don't need that Eye of Ophidia. You could just make it like one of these extra blue cards and you'd be fine. But looking at probably the second strongest hero is the other Wizard here. Wizards are just really strong. Stormstriders gives you effectively an extra turn of damage. They both get it. So extra turn of damage is pretty good. The list is, probably going to be pretty similar to this. And it's going to be pretty strong. I mean, Stormstriders is going to pull a lot of weight in the Blitz format and dealing all this basically unblockable arcane. You can see, unlike in the formats like Classic Constructed, there's no attack actions in this version of Icelander. You could play an attack action version, but it might be a little slow, and the unblockable arcane damage is really just quite strong. And then kind of rounding out the powerful heroes here, there's kind of the top 5, right? There is the 2 Wizards, there's Oldham, and then there's the 2 Monarch heroes. And Chain is one of those really powerful Monarch heroes. He has, some of the highest damage output outside of the unblockable stuff from the Wizards. We still get to do really crazy broken Art of War stuff with Chain's hero ability. You have a smaller deck, so you go through it faster with his hero ability. You still get Carrion Husk. So Carrion Husk, along with 2 or 3 block on the headpiece and the Grasp of the Arknights, makes it so you have just almost like 30 health when you start the game with all the equipment block he gets. So really strong there. And if you're not in the mood to play Wizard at these events and you want to play a kind of more traditional aggro deck, I think Chain would be a great place to start. And he's a little less difficult than the Wizards as well. I'm not going to say he's easy, but he's certainly less difficult than the Wizards are to pick up and pilot. It's more just traditional, playing non-attacks, playing attacks, and then getting to attack with Rosetta Thorn. You even get to play a lot of banned stuff in this. You get to play Chain, who is obviously not legal anymore, and you get to play the Belittles, which is really strong as well. So you get to play a lot of cards and effects that are no longer legal in Classic Constructed. So if you want to play stuff that's basically Living Legend now, picking up Chain would be a great option. And then if you like the Guardian playstyle, the disruptive playstyle, the kind of best disruptive deck seems to be Oldhim. He still has access to Winter's Wail, a very, very strong weapon, and he can do some really strong stuff. He still has Pulse of Volthaven, or Eisenloft, sorry, letting him do Oakenold stuff still. So he's kind of in his strong, pure Oldhim form like he has been before all these bans. And you're just kind of an aggressive, disruptive deck, right? You're not going to deal nearly as much damage as any of those Wizards or Chain or anything like that. But you have a weapon that gives a Frostbite on hit. You have a shield that gives Frostbites when it blocks. And then you've got great attacks like Endless Winter and Oakenold and Pulverize. And then you've got all this ice stuff. So it's a lot more disruptive version. This is probably what I would play in Blitz because I like Guardians a lot. And getting to play with Winter's Wail again and getting to play with Eisenloft and Oakenold sounds super fun. So yeah, I think one of the appeals of Blitz is definitely playing a lot of the stuff that's not legal in Classic Constructed. And on that note, our other Living Legend hero is Prism here. So Prism has, like always with Illusionists, a very interesting matchup spread. Illusionists are always quite good into the Wizards, so she'll be good into kind of both of the top Wizard decks, and she's even pretty good into Guardians, so she'd be good into Oldhim. So she seems like a solid pick, being good into both Wizards and into Oldhim, but obviously her big weakness is aggro decks. So the Chain that we just saw, she's going to have a rough matchup into Chain, and then some of the next decks we're going to look at, like Dash and Reinr and even Kasai, any of these aggro decks she's going to struggle into. So I think she's a great pick, because Wizard is so popular and Guardian is so popular. You just need to avoid those aggressive decks. And I think she's in a great spot. I mean, you get to play old school Prism with a bunch of Heralds and even some Auras here. And I think it's going to be super fun. I mean, everyone loves Luminaris. Getting to attack for 1-for-7 go-agains is really fun. So I think a really fun kind of aggressive Prism list here. This one actually looks like it's a little less Aura focused. So it might be a little worse into Oldhim because of all their poppers, but a little better into stuff like Chain because you have less of the Aura focus. So you can kind of pick your poison with the Prism list, but this is going to be a strong, strong option as well. So those are kind of our top 5 heroes for Blitz, right? We've got the Wizards, Icelander and Kano. We've got the Monarch heroes, Prism and Chain. And then we've got Oldhim as our Guardian and Disruptive deck. And if you're just looking to win an event, I would probably pick between those 5 heroes. I think the Wizards are maybe a little more difficult, but they have the highest ceiling and potential. And then the other 3 decks are maybe a little easier to pick up and play. And they'll all be strong, and you can win your skirmish on any of them. But let's look at kind of the dark horse decks to round out our top 8. First, looking at Kasai, who I think is the most fun deck out of all of these. I really love the Blade Runner cards that give your one-handed weapons go again. I really like the whole function of the one-handed weapon deck with blood on her hands and all of that. Slice and Dice is really cool. You get to play Valiant Dynamo. I think this deck's really, really fun. It's not going to be as strong as some of the other decks. It has a little bit lower damage potential. It has some consistency to make up for that, but It's definitely a little lacking on the damage side, but she even has a cool hero ability, making your second sword attack each turn cost 1 less. So all in all, I think Kasai is a cool Dark Horse pick. She might be good if you think there's going to be some other, more mid-rangey stuff in your meta, some more aggro decks, but she might struggle a little into those wizards that are going to be making up a lot of the top 8 there. Our next deck is Dash. I think Dash is probably the strongest Blitz deck to play if you just want something easy. It's just boost Dash, and you're just killing them as quickly as possible. You get to start with the Teklo Pounder. You get to attack with all the really strong stuff, throttles, 0 to 60, zipper hits. You get Pulse Wave Harpoon now, max velocities. I mean, it's just a straight aggro deck. And yeah, I mean, I think this is a great deck if you just want something really simple and you want kind of the most straight up traditional aggro deck in the format. This deck is really just to play 3 or 4 attacks with Go Again and then pass turn. It does have the option to block if it wants, because all its cards are going to block 3 for the most part. But really, it's just a straight aggro deck. And it might actually be pretty decent into some of the wizards, because you do get AB3 pretty easily with just 2 equipment pieces. And then this one's even playing the last piece of AB on the arm, so you can get AB4 pretty easily, which is strong. And you have some blues, 12 blues to make up for that. So this might be pretty good into the wizards as well, which is nice to see. And then the most high rolly deck, as brutes tend to be, is Reinr, rounding out our top 8 heroes in Blitz. If you really like rolling the dice, Reinr's the pick for you. He has, almost like Kano, the most potential to win on the very first turn of the game. He can win on his very first turn. He has the keyword Intimidate, making it so your opponent banishes that card from their hand, and they don't get it back until the start of their turn. So they lose that card blocking-wise for that whole turn. And you have the ability to intimidate all 4 of your opponent's cards, so they can only block with their equipment, and then deal enough damage so that you can kill them even through their equipment. So the deck has a ton of potential. If you like rolling some dice to try to get extra action points, rolling the dice to, the metaphorical dice to try to get good banishes and big cards off, this is kind of the deck for you. I mean, this deck has good matchups. It can beat Prism pretty well. It can beat Oldhim. It can even beat the Wizards sometimes if you're able to, banish a lot of their cards. So this is kind of the high rolly deck. If you really want to just see if you can deal 30 unblockable damage on the first turn, this deck wins games. I mean, we saw it even at the World Championship, winning games in Blitz just by winning, on the very first turn. So a great high rolly option if that's what you're into. And that kind of rounds out our top 8 for Blitz. So the format looks really fun. I love the idea of a format where you get to play all these cards that aren't legal anymore in Classic Constructed. You could even play Plunder Run, I think, in this chain deck. And it's just a really interesting and cool format. You get to play Prism, you get to play Chain. Kano's really good, which is cool. You get to play Oldhim with Oakenold, Eisenloft, and Winter's Whale. It's a really interesting format, and I'm excited to see the results of this Skirmish season. So thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you next time.